Later's better than never, so here we are now at least. I plan on trying to do bi-weekly uploads since I think once a month would be too long, but once a week is too short for the kind of quality I want to put out. Like I said, perfectionism.
If you watched my last video, you'll know that one of the core tenets of being choofed is being able to identify and understand the power of the little things. I feel like this is one of the most important yet difficult pieces of the choof puzzle to actually put into practice. So that's what we'll be focusing on today, learning to spot the tiny yet mighty influences on our lives and the greater world around us. There's a lot to cover, and I have a few stories throughout history to kind of better explain myself. So let's just keep the intro brief and get started, shall we? In my opinion, there's two major reasons why being aware of the little things is so difficult. First should be obvious, as it's right in the name. They're small, they're meant to be overlooked, seen as nothing other than a mere coincidence or as a side effect of some larger issue at hand rather than the patient zero itself. As you'll hear in some of the stories later on, odds are that people affected know some event took place, but they aren't aware of how consequential what they just witnessed might be until far later down the road. The other major hurdle that makes identifying the little things significantly harder is what I have dubbed the delay dilemma, patent pending. Essentially, most of the consequences that end up stemming from the little thing in question are more often seen months, if not years down the line. This opens the door for psychological tricks such as recency bias and social proofing to alter both how we interpret the aftermath of the little thing and the reasons behind said aftermath in the first place. This issue not only becomes more relevant over time, but is also exacerbated by the size issue of these kinds of events. Remember, they're small. The little things are already extremely difficult to spot in the moment. Add on the need to remember a seemingly minor detail from an event that may have taken place years ago, and it's no wonder why claims like it's gotta be the gays and attacks on other minorities have been such a common scapegoat. It requires no additional thought and already has strong emotional ties to it. And as we all know, the easiest way to stop people from using their head is to go for their heart. So yeah, the little things. The tiny yet mighty, the small yet big bald. They're complicated. Like everything else in life. Who would have guessed? I think that's about as well as I can do to describe the general concept, so let's get into some examples, shall we? Grab a beverage, your favorite strain. Let's get to yapping. More than I already do already.
Would you rather have unlimited bacon, but no more games? Or games, unlimited games, and no games?
That was so nothing.
What?
That was absolutely
You'd rather
nothing.
have unlimited bacon?
You may have already heard of the legendary Cresta Animation Productions 2010 film, Alpha and Omega. But did you know that the name is a play on a real natural phenomenon between wolves too? That's right. Hollywood stole something from science and entertained to find it before repackaging it and selling it back to the public. Can you believe it? Oh well. Grand scheme of things, finding inspiration isn't a crime. Hopefully Hollywood doesn't do anything else sketchy and deplorable in their free time. Anyway, before Alpha and Omega could grace 2010's children with 88 minutes of furry propaganda, the ethological community had been tossing around the theories of family structure within certain species, most notably gray wolves. And in the ethological community, very few were as respected as Lucien David Mech. See, Mech had already been studying wolves since 1958 when he was nearing graduation from Cornell University. He then spent the 1960s studying wolves across North America in Minnesota, Isle Royale, which is an island on Lake Superior, Ellesmere Island, Canada's northernmost island, and Yellowstone. This guy was the LeBron James of wolves, okay? In 1970, L. David James published a book detailing and reflecting upon what he had learned from watching a family unit of wolves over multiple summers at the Isle Royale National Park during the 1960s. This book would turn out to be hugely influential in managing wolf populations throughout Yellowstone and other national parks, and David would be asked to give his expertise about wolf reintroduction in Yellowstone during the early 90s. After publishing a book called The Wolf, The Ecology and Behavior of an Endangered Species, Mech simply went back to his research. For nearly 40 years, Mech's findings would remain mildly contested, yet greatly respected within the scientific community. However, it would see very little traction in conversations outside of ethology and wildlife management circles. But it wouldn't stay that way forever. One unfortunate consequence of the modern internet is difficulty in tracing the roots of one's claim back to an actual book, article, website, just some sort of tangible source to point to and show where you got whatever claim you're spouting. I feel like it's so common to see someone's evidence being I heard it from a podcast once, or my friend told me this, or I saw a Twitter post, just something along those lines, you know? Fact checking is essentially dead unless it's built into the platform like Twitter, and even then, Twitter is still a shithole. I know, we're getting there, I promise. Still give me a little longer. So what exactly did Mech discover? And if what he had discovered was so important, why did it take over 4 decades to reach a wider audience? To sum it up, that damn phone. See, the difficulty in tracing a source cited online back to its original physical or digital form is no different in David Mech's case. As far as I can tell, a handful of newspaper articles and books had been published prior to 2010, echoing what internet blogs in the dark corners of the internet had been doing for years at that point. And once the internet and social media alike had been normalized, the online landscape was changed forever. Upon the release of The Wolf, the Ecology, and the Behavior of an Endangered Species in 1970, Lucien David Mech had introduced the concept of the alpha male to the scientific community. And before online personalities like Andrew Tate had twisted the idea to apply to humans and brought it to the general public's attention, earlier online forums encouraging masculinity and misogyny had been debating the application to their own dating lives. And I don't think I have to tell you the scale of the manosphere problem today. L. David Mech, after simply surveying wolves for his job and publishing his findings like every other scientist, had unknowingly sowed one of the core seeds to the manosphere we know today. And the kicker? Mech admits he was wrong. He and the scientific community at large now recognize that what he initially thought was a hierarchical structure based on strength turned out to be parental figures watching over their pups. It was a basic family structure with a mom and a dad and their kids. I just can't believe it. A group of people with ill intent taking a false claim and running with it. Who could have possibly seen this coming? I just find it absolutely fascinating. The connection between Mech and the online misogyny sounds absolutely absurd, but the traces are there. You can be doing your everyday job today, and 40 years from now, someone who doesn't even exist yet can completely flip your work into something new and influence countless people with it. The little things, man. They matter.
Tactical nuke incoming!
We're going to jump in time and subject matter a little bit here. From the ecological sphere amidst the Cold War to another part of the Cold War. Shit. I won't take as long on this story because I think it's one a lot of people have already covered on YouTube before, and it's not exactly a super long one in the first place due to the limited amount of public information we know. Anyway, let's talk about the Sotry Soviet hunk that saved the world. Vasily Arkhipov. I hope I'm saying that right. Shout out all my Russians that aren't oligarchs. Right in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Arkhipov was serving as the chief of staff and second in command on the Soviet Union's B-59 submarine sailing around the waters of Cuba. On October 27th, 1962, a group of 11 U.S. Navy destroyers and the aircraft carrier USS Randolph had managed to locate the B-59 amidst the depths of the Caribbean Sea. Caribbean? Now, despite being in international waters, the U.S. Navy made the gutsy choice to drop signaling depth charges in hopes of the sub surfacing and identifying itself. They dropped bombs on a random sub before IDing it in international waters during the Cuban Missile Crisis. What? Anyway, this prompted the crew of the B-59 to believe they were under attack, and tensions among the commanding officers only grew with each passing minute as they discussed their next course of action. The captain of the sub, oh god, forgive me if I say this wrong, Valentin Grigorievich Savitsky, maybe, had already assumed a war had broken out and ordered the launch of the B-59 on board's T-5 nuclear torpedo. And it was here, in unknown depth below the surface of the Caribbean Sea, where Vasily single-handedly saved the world. To put things even further into context, okay? The Navy had dropped their bombs after days of no contact from superiors in Moscow. The B-59 was able to pick up random American public radio broadcasts, but was too deep to properly intercept and monitor the radio traffic since it was too busy trying to hide from Americans. Essentially, the crew of the B-59 had been isolated for days underwater and was just bombed without any direct orders on what to do if discovered. Additionally noteworthy, unlike the other submarines in the Soviet fleet that only required 2 officers, the B-59 required 3 commanding officers on board to authorize the use of a nuclear torpedo. Arkhipov had also been involved in the previous year's K-19 incident. Essentially, a nuclear reactor aboard another Soviet submarine, the K-19, had begun to melt down, but the crew were able to jury-rig a secondary coolant system, unfortunately leaving most of the crew highly irradiated in the aftermath, yet preventing a meltdown at the same time. This gave Arkhipov and those involved a great degree of respect amongst the ranks of the Soviet Navy. So, all that to say, when Arkhipov began arguing against the launch of the B-59's torpedo, Savitsky listened, and eventually the other 2 officers had talked down. The B-59 surfaced, proceeded to see it was surrounded by a fleet of U.S. Navy ships, spoke with the captain of one of the destroyers, and was promptly told to go back to the Soviet Union. So they did. And nuclear war was prevented for one more day. Of course, Arkhipav's actions would not be known for 40 years until a 2002 interview with a retired commander aboard the B-59 that day, who stated, and I quote, "Arkhipov was the reason those weapons weren't fired." It was also revealed that the B-59 crew was heavily ridiculed after returning to the Soviet Union. One admiral was even reported saying to Arkhipov, quote, "It would have been better if you had gone down with your ship." This story fascinates me for so many reasons, but for this video in particular, remember Vasily Arkhipov when you feel like your actions are useless. He wasn't the highest ranking officer, wasn't any more aware of the situation than anybody else on board, and was even outvoted by other officers. Yet he stood his ground and single-handedly saved the world.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
Many historians recount that a major global conflict in Europe beginning in the 20th century was almost certain. Lesser-known wars had already created tensions between neighboring regions, and military technology was developing at a faster rate than ever before, leaving generals and leaders grasping at straws to find any reason to beat the daylights out of each other. It was like Jake Paul and Mike Tyson literally every fucking week, okay? I don't know how to explain this. So when Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated driving through an open-top car in Sarajevo, the Austrian Empire was more than willing to point blame at neighboring Serbia before launching an invasion and officially kicking off World War I as we know it. But I want to circle back and discuss the assassination of Mr. Furry Man, because this story alone just has so many what the fuck moments in it. From the insane timing of his trip in Sarajevo to the assassination itself, I remember first hearing about this on a crash course history in middle school. Shout out Hank Reed! Shout out Hank! Doesn't he have cancer? Or is it his brother? Dude, I don't remember. But even then, I remember thinking, this guy is a military political leader? Talk about the blind leading the blind. Anyway, France got folded. But how exactly did it happen? Let's add in a little more background before getting into the day of. Sarajevo is the capital city of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which had been annexed by the Austria-Hungary Empire in 1878. Their neighbor, Serbia, perceived this and frequent threats from the Austria-Hungarian military leaders as preparations for annexation over their own sovereign territory. So 1900 Serbia was filled with frequent assassination attempts on military generals and royals. On top of this, Serbian military forces overran their own royal palace in 1903 and subsequently shot the king 33 times and the queen 18 before, quote, the royal corpses were then stripped and brutally sabered. I think they're already dead, guys. So yeah, major stability in the region leading up to Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia, Duchess of Austria, to take a lovely drive through the city's capital. But we're not done yet. Oh no. It gets worse. The day of their visit, June 28th, 1914, is also conveniently a Serbian holiday. The day is called, forgive me, Vidovdan? 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 One of those? I don't know. Is that actually it? Wait, let me look this shit up. You know what? Nah, I ain't embarrassing myself. I'm looking this shit up. Dude, it's showing me a YouTube video instead of just telling me how to fucking pronounce it.
Vidovdan.
Vidovdan?
Vidovdan.
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 Okay. Fair enough, I guess. Vidovdan. Vidovdan. Why is that fun? Vidovdan. Mamma mia. Oh, that's offensive. Now, the day of their visit, June 28th, 1914, is also conveniently a Serbian holiday. The day is called Vidovdan, and it has a long history dating back to 1389. With the Battle of Kosovo, but it wasn't first publicly celebrated until 1851. The best comparison that my tiny American brain can make is that it's the Serbian equivalent of Cinco de Mayo, but with an extra religious element to that. I'm sorry if that's offensive. This is just how I make sense of new things. I have to compare it to something else that I'm already familiar with. Not only that, but Fran's motorcade route was also published in the newspaper a couple of days prior to the event. So just so we're keeping track, a leading figure in the Austria-Hungarian Empire is actively traveling to the capital city of a country where they have been hated for over a decade at this point, with years of assassinations and attempts prior, on the day of a nationally celebrated holiday, with the route published ahead of time. Who thought this was a good idea? What the fuck were the higher, I'm speechless. And that's not even all of it. On the day of the assassination, 6 members of the Black Hand, a Serbian nationalist group, had lined the streets ahead of the motorcade route. Armed with bombs and pistols, 2 of the members failed to even act when the motorcade passed by them, while a 3rd member had thrown his bomb and blew up the car behind Franz and Sophie. 2 more members were placed further up the street, but were also unable to throw their bombs due to the high speed of the motorcade driving away from the attempted assassination. Oh yeah, and the one who threw the bomb? Well, part of the plan was for each member to take a cyanide capsule and kill themselves before capture. Not only did the third man take his capsule, but he also threw himself into the nearby Milyaka River and was arrested. See, the capsule was old, meaning it only left him vomiting and nauseous, and the Milyaka River was only 13 centimeters deep due to the summer heat lowering water levels. Needless to say, the crowd dragged our boy out of the puddle, beating him senseless before arresting him. So close. Just a little. The plan was good. The execution was a little off. Wait. This part failed. How did Archduke Franz get killed then? I'm getting there. So after giving a speech with the mayor, Franz's party decided to forego the rest of the day's activities in favor of visiting the wounded in hospital. How admirable. So as they leave, Franz and Sophie get back into the same car in the same spot in the motorcade and start heading for the hospital. After learning about the failed assassination from the prior hour, the 6th and final member of the Black Hand, bet you forgot about the 6th one, didn't you? Had decided to move to a nearby food shop in hopes of getting a shot at Franz on his return journey out of the city. However, God himself must have wanted Franz dead that day, because if what happened next was written into a movie, people would be calling it Hollywood bullshit. On the way to the hospital, the motorcade carrying the Archduke and Duchess had taken a wrong turn due to a change in route. One of the members traveling with the couple noticed they were going the wrong way and told the driver to stop. The driver stopped, attempted to throw it in reverse to get back on track, and unfortunately, in his haste, stalled the car right in front of a food shop where the last member of a group planning an assassination on the very man in that car was waiting, who calmly walked up and shot them. And with that, history was changed forever. I mean, come on. Do I really need to compare this to the greater message of this video? The details within the story are like a Saturday morning cartoon plot. Genuinely, if any of these small events had changed, it could have averted war for, okay, like another month or so. Let's be real. World War I was bound to happen eventually, but the circumstances could have been very different. And as we've seen through the rest of this video, delaying World War I by a single month could have changed the outcome. Impossible to say, but the little things have a habit of making history. And think about it. Without the World War I we know today, we wouldn't have had the Treaty of Versailles, which would have prevented a weak Germany, which would have prevented an angry German man's rise to power, which would have prevented World War II, and tensions between the East and West upon its conclusion, which would have ended the nuclear arms race in the Cold War before it even started. And think of all the technology that developed because of these major global conflicts. A lot of military technology post-World War II was repurposed into civilian products that led to major improvements on the average person's living conditions. This, of course, produced like the nuclear family that we all know and gave rise to the middle class within the 1950s, leading to familiar social ideas like gender roles within society. Hell, computers themselves, dude! Computers themselves were introduced to the military as code breakers to calculate trigonometric functions quickly, before then converting them to industrial and commercial uses. Of course, this would be then improved upon with the personal computer, which gave rise to the internet and modern social media as we know it. And now there's AI that's been used automating military defenses for decades, but it's just now being researched for civilian use. Oh my god, it's all connected. Franz died so e-girls and Silicon Tech Valley bros could run. Thank you for watching, as always. I can make these videos all day, every day, but it wouldn't mean much without other people there to share it with. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'll try not to take as long with my next video. No spoilers there. Yeah, that'll do it for me. Like, subscribe, comment if you found any of this interesting or you have any ideas that you think would make a good video. I'm always open to learning about new shit. I've been Choofie. Stay choofed. Take care, guys.
Yo, I can... Okay, I was like, if they modeled the cat's hole, that's crazy. Also kind of... Ignore the fact that I was looking. I just can appreciate the details in art, you know, chat. That's it. That's 100% it.